Did you ever know somebody, maybe back in the day when they were younger, in school or whatever, and they were just a mean, toxic, petty, insufferable person? And of course, then as they grew up and they matured, then they became an empathetic and toxic and petty, insufferable person, right? It's crazy. I feel like the people who talk the most about empathy tend to be really toxic people. Meanwhile, all of the people I know who are the most like kind, amazing people you'd ever meet, I don't think they've ever said the word empathy in their lives. Brothers and sisters in Christ, we're here with another video. I was feeling, it's kind of a drizzly day, and I was catching kind of a vibe. So I got out the nice camera, and we're doing a little rainy day video today. So I want to talk a little bit more about empathy, because for my sweet, beloved leftoid friends, ultimately, I think almost all of your politics are sort of grounded in the idea of empathy. The idea, not necessarily what I would consider the reality. But if you ask somebody who's left-wing why they believe what they believe, usually it's something like that. It's based on empathy. And there's a couple ways that they talk about empathy that I think are really problematic. Because to them, empathy is all about this, warm, fuzzy feelings. It feels so nice and good. Empathy is just being a good fucking person, right? I watched Bluey and they taught me about the golden rule. It's not just a kid's show. It made me cry. Grown-ass man, by the way. All right. The unfortunate reality is that, a moral principle that we use to guide the etiquette of daycare, there's actually more. There's more nuance to the wider world, to the adult world, to politics than that. So in practical use, when somebody says empathy, a lot of times what they're really meaning is sympathy. Because empathy is putting yourself in somebody else's shoes and just being able to completely immerse yourself and understand that person. Be able to, it's forming a connection with that person. Sympathy is putting yourself in their shoes and then putting on your rose-tinted glasses. Empathy is a holistic reality of that person, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Sympathy is we only really care about the good. Right? Empathy lets you understand that for a child who dropped their ice cream cone, that's a big deal. It's a big piece of their world and it's important to them. And then sympathy is what lets you set that aside and say, well, I know that dropping an ice cream cone is not a big deal, but we're going to set that aside and we're just going to, express our condolences over their lost ice cream. So to put this in a real world example, let's take an immigrant from an undeveloped country. And let's say they're coming from somewhere where it's totally normalized to steal. The reality is that there's way worse things that are normalized in some of these places, but we're just going to go with stealing. A leftoid who's empathetic, a lovable leftoid, is going to say, okay, and I think we can all do this. I'm going to put myself in their shoes, and I understand that, if I had to steal to survive, and that's the reality in the country they're coming from, they had to steal to be able to survive. I can understand that. If my life depended on it, I would set my moral qualms aside and I would steal. We can all empathize with that. But that's very surface level, and that's the issue. Is if you go kind of deeper, we're going to lose our rose-colored glasses. We're going to see a whole picture. But that's what empathy really is understanding the fullness of a person. So really the issue, I would say, with liberals is not that they are too empathetic, but they are not good at being empathetic. So you've got this person coming, their whole life, they've had to steal to survive. Now they've come to America or some other prosperous country where things are well enough that they don't have to steal. If we just go with that initial, empathy analysis of the person, well, we've brought them to this great, wonderful place, so now they don't have to steal. But to this person, they have always stolen. The issue with this analysis is you're bringing your own personal self and putting it into their shoes. You're saying, me today with my moral values, I would steal if I had to survive. This person doesn't have those moral qualms. This immigrant has always stolen, and so it doesn't even occur to them that it's wrong. So you bring them to America, they're not necessarily going to just stop stealing, even if they don't have to steal. And especially if the choice is now you can work or steal. Working sucks. Everybody knows that. Nobody likes to work. So they're going to go with stealing. And then on top of that, where they came from, if they had gotten caught stealing, their hands get cut off or something. Versus comparatively here, we basically don't even care, right? So of course they would steal. But that's completely lost if you can't actually understand what it would be like to come from that kind of background. Now, this isn't to say that an immigrant like that is just, they're just an irredeemable subhuman. That's not the case, right? They're still a beloved child of God. But this is to say that maybe maybe we can't just have a million immigrants like that come into a country, right? Obviously, there's going to be integration needed. Like that kind of immigrant would need basically like a babysitter to completely teach them that this is a wrong thing, that they have no conception of it being wrong currently. So that's an example of the sympathy versus empathy. And don't get me wrong, I'm not some boomer neocon, right? Like we talked about in my last video, who's going to be like, yeah, empathy is just garbage. It's a hard world. And so, you're just being soft. Empathy is a great virtue. It's a great personal virtue. And so the other issue is bringing empathy into politics at all, in a sense. Because the law, right, any kind of political structure, the government in general, the purpose of it is to promote the common good. Empathy is a relational, personal virtue. Empathy is seeing another specific person and understanding that person, looking in their eyes and seeing the soul in their eyes, right? It would be like saying that you want to have empathetic laws would be like saying you want to have courageous laws. What are you talking about? A law isn't courageous. A person can be courageous, but not a law. If you're trying to have empathetic governing, you're going to be doing one of two things. First of all, you're going to be having tunnel vision because you're empathizing with a single particular person. And this is how we get these like activist judge cases that are just absolutely outrageous. The judge, and this is a real thing that even happened in my city, is sitting there reading off, oh, I don't really think you deserve to go to prison for 50 years. We're going to give you a reduced sentence, even though you kidnapped a woman out of her car and raped her multiple times and at gunpoint and everything. And this criminal's in there in the courtroom screaming and swearing at the judge about how when he gets out, he's gonna get everybody in that room and they're gonna be sorry. And there's just blinders on because, for one, I think in this kind of case, you definitely have those rose-colored glasses on in the first place, where you're like, well, he's had a hard life, so I'm sure he's just angry in this current moment, and he'll over the years that we did give him in prison, he'll get better, right? And you're not seeing the victim sitting over there, whose rapist is going to get out sooner. You're sitting there. I imagine she's probably in court, and you're saying right in her face, "Yeah, it wasn't that bad. It doesn't really require all that." And then certainly members of your community who are going to be put at risk by this decision. And then the second thing that can happen is, I don't know, maybe it's sort of the same thing, but a lot of times laws are going to deal with whole demographics, right? You're never writing, I would say almost all the time. I don't even know if it's legal for you to write a law of like, it's like I saw that this one skit. There's a guy like sitting on the couch watching TV, and his friend comes up and he's like, Jason, they're writing a bill that they're transferring the national debt all to you personally. And he turns on the TV and it's this broadcast just like about all the things the government is doing to him specifically. I don't think you can even write laws like that. So you're always dealing with groups of people. And if you're trying to be empathetic with a group of people, you can't be empathetic with multiple people at once because you're trying to understand the person. And when you have two different people, there's going to be differences between those people. So it's like an individual basis, not all at once kind of deal. So if you're thinking you're empathetic with a group of people, what you're really doing is you're compiling a sort of mental proxy for this group of people and empathizing with this sort of made up person that you've created who represents the entirety of the group. So you're losing any kind of nuance, and you're very susceptible to creating a biased perception, right? If we go back to immigration, we'll see this on both sides, where the liberals will say, oh, they'll act like every immigrant is just here to make a better life. And the conservatives, I'll say, have a issue on the other hand, acting like every immigrant is only here to sell drugs, right? So I really think, well, no, I didn't say this in the last video. I don't think I did. But my goal is I'm never making red pill videos. This is not to, I'm not hoping some liberal watches this and is like, yeah, no, what? I'm voting Republican every time now. No, I think we have this right-wing issue where anybody who becomes interested in, I don't know, like fighting for the cause is just focused on red pill content. We don't, I think we're past that. We don't need any more red pill content. Okay? But for me, this is kind of what I was saying in the last video is I'm looking for understanding and like meeting in the middle with left-wing people as a extreme right-wing restorationist. And so this is kind of my challenge to someone who might be watching and considers themselves a leftist. Keep these things in mind when you are constructing your political beliefs around the idea of empathy. I'm not expecting you to just go full-blown like Nick Fuentes just because you've seen this video. But really, like, take a thought to this. Like, am I missing something? Is what I think of as empathy, is that really just sympathy? Am I really understanding this person? Am I putting my blinders on and focusing on one person instead of promoting the common good with what I'm advocating for? And if you're not advocating for the common good, then what are you doing? Like, that's the whole point of us having a government. That's why we come together and build a society, is for the common good. So anyhow, I hope this was a useful video. If you're left-wing or right-wing, let me know any of your thoughts on empathy and how it informs people's political beliefs. Thanks for sticking with me on another one, and I will see you in another video. Thanks.